Don't see Chris yet, but Lucy is here. Lucy had submitted concerns regarding traffic on West Street, and I think you all received copies of that.
Yeah, and that's some of what we're going to talk about when we talk about some of the traffic related concerns. And Margaret, we talked the other day, we don't have any minutes now to approve.
No, the committee last met on December 7th, 2020, and that was the community feedback session on the shared streets and spaces project. So
didn't we meet in March?
Oh, did you meet in March?
Yeah. We met to discuss before town meeting, right? To discuss the radar signs.
Oh,
we did
yes.
meet in March. I have a few notes, Chief. Yep.
Okay, well, I don't have those either. Sorry.
Yeah, that was I think a relatively brief discussion. We just went over what we're going to talk more about tonight, which was the mobile radar signs. We talked about that article before it went forward for time.
I know why I don't have notes on that. I wasn't at that meeting. I'm sorry. Mary, if you would share your notes with me, I'd be happy to prepare minutes from those.
Yeah, I can type them up. I mean, the committee voted on bringing the warrant forward at town meeting for the sign.
Okay.
Yeah, you might have to interpret a little bit of what I wrote because yeah.
All right. Well, what I did want to do tonight is talk a little bit about those signs. I actually put together an email. Thought I sent it out last week, but realized just as I sat down at my desk tonight that I only replied to Margaret and not replied all. So I did send it to everyone. So I do have it for you. But what I did is I went out and got 5 quotes. Some were very similar to the quotes that we had looked at that night. So there's 5 different companies. I actually want to show you one, and Margaret, I think I can share my screen, right?
I think you can, yes.
So does everyone see that one come up?
Join the
Yes.
Elon City.
Yep. So of the 5 quotes, this actually happened to be the lowest cost. It will actually allow us to purchase 4 of them. I know we had talked about 2, 3, or how many we're going to be at. This would allow us to purchase 4. In terms of from a police department perspective, probably wouldn't be my first choice. I would have looked at something a little bit more data driven, but the responses that we got from the public wanted some of this, whether it's slow down. This is a programmable message that's on there. I know the smiley face has been talked about a lot. I did get a quote for some of the smiley face ones. They're much more expensive. Plus they were larger, bulkier signs and harder to move around, and we want some portability. So I think that this product would end up working out best for us. It does the data collection that we need. What's nice is the data collection software that it comes with lifetime free upgrades, no subscription. And we can get these these end up being $28.68 a piece. So we'll be able to get 4 of them with the $12,000 that was appropriated at town meeting. So I did include in that email the other 4 signs, the other 4 companies that I did look at. A couple are similar, but I think this is going to be the best product for us to go with. It's going to allow us to collect the data that we need to collect, especially to address some of the traffic concerns, and but also have that positive and or negative feedback, whatever we decide to, whether it's a slowdown or a thank you, or to the drivers as they go by. So I just wanted to show that to everyone. I didn't know if anyone had any questions, comments, concerns about what we were going to purchase.
So you said that it didn't necessarily have all the features that from a police perspective you might want. What would you be after if you had your
just a little bit different software. I think this is going to give us what we need. There's another product. Let's see. Did that change? Did my screen change or no?
Yes.
Okay. So these Shield products from all traffic solutions. You'll actually see these in Northborough. You might see a couple of them in Hudson. They just go a little bit deeper with data. So it allows us a little bit more if we're going to do some deeper data collection. But these end up being almost the most expensive at almost $3,700 a piece. So that would cut us back, just to 3. I think to have 4, have more flexibility. And the data is only going to be as good as what we do with it. So I don't think we need to get as technical with some of the conversations I've had recently with CMRPC. I think if we need to really dive deep into data, we can work with them to have them do some of the counts that we want on particular roads. One of the things is vehicle classifications. So to be able to discern trucks, cars, this allows a little bit more with that, where the other doesn't dive into that. That's not to say that some of their software upgrades, which will be free, won't allow that in the future.
So what if you mix here? I didn't do the math and I didn't catch your figure on the first, but I mean, if you did 3 and 1, and
so the problem with the Elon ones is we get a discount with those if we purchase them in pairs.
Okay. And do you envision these moving around?
Yes. Yep. And that's why I didn't want to look at some of the bigger, bulkier ones, just because moving them around would become too difficult. All of these have relatively quick type release mounting systems, and what is that? And this, I'll turn this one around. This either has a band, but that you can also see in the top there's a like an open hole. The quote that I got, it comes with a bar mount, so we would actually mount the bar to the pole, and then the sign would mount to the bar.
And so when you say it doesn't, this one doesn't discern as completely types of vehicles as the more expensive one, is that what's going on?
Yeah, it's just the limitations of the software to date.
So, I mean, it'll tell us a semi truck from a 4-wheel automobile, or
this one, the other ones would do that. Well, one of the other ones would. This one won't. But what this will do is it'll tell us how many vehicles are passing through at any given time. It will do all the speed breakdowns, all those we would need to do. If we wanted to check or do an 85th percentile on the road to see if we wanted to petition the state to change a speed limit,
right?
That would handle all of that and do all those calculations for us instead of having to do it manually.
But you wouldn't get truck counts separate.
No, but I think that's something that we could work out.
We get that from CMRPC.
CMRPC, at least for the main roads, we get it for CMRPC.
Right.
And I think if it came down to it and we needed a specific area and a specific count, we could always rent a piece of equipment. We've rented some signboards and things like that. If we needed to do something for a week, we could do a short-term type rental versus a purchase.
Chief, these 2 were your top choices? This and the,
yeah, the other ones, let's see, we had the Pace. This one was similar. This one is a little bit bulkier, harder to mount. It does have the feedback, but it just, I've used these signs before, and they're just bigger and bulkier and harder to use. And when you look at the price, they're very similar to the Elon. And when you look at the price for those, you're at a higher price. So it didn't make sense to investigate those anymore. We had these were from a Canadian company, and I found these because the smiley face was talked about at a lot of meetings. Again, these have the data collection that we would be looking for, but these get up to about $3,700 a sign. And these are actually 50 inches tall by 23 inches wide. So it just would have been a really huge sign to try and move around and mount temporarily. If it was a more permanent solution, these probably would have been okay. And
It
then
would be interesting to see the signs measuring in kilometers per hour.
it is can change it. And then these others were from Custom Signal. And the reason I looked at these is we've recently transitioned and are rolling out body cameras, and we use software through Custom Signal for them. So I think there could have been some integration with the software and some simplicity for the officers. But these are very, very basic. There's no feedback. It just tells you what your speed is. So it didn't really have all the features that the feedback that at least I heard from the community that people wanted to see. So that kind of pushed me right back to the Elon. And
Chief, what would the cost be for 2 of the Elon signs and 2 of the other top options that gather more data? What would the total cost be?
Keep it rough. Some of the shipping may change, but about 13,500. So it puts us, if it was a little bit over, I'm sure I could find something in the police budget to be able to make it work. But I think, and then the other thing is, who's going to be using them to have consistency, have one type of sign, one database to work from versus having different signs where the data doesn't integrate. I just think we'd be better off going with the Elon City ones.
Does the new large message board that's up on Highland right now, does that collect data?
That does not, it is a sign or speed, shows the speeds, but it does not collect data.
Okay.
And yes, it works. It does show your speed.
It does. I made some adjustments the first day after Fred put it out because it wasn't picking up my car. It was perfect with trucks, but I think just because of the size of the car, it wasn't picking up. So we made a couple of adjustments, and now I can't get past it.
So what does the committee think?
Yeah, so any other feedback?
I think, the comments that have come in, the public comments that have come in, that there are the trucks and the truck brakes mentioned in several of the comments, but aside from that, I think the data collection on the number of vehicles and speed is really getting to what we need on Route 62 to try to put some traffic calming measures on the highway. And the town's got to make the case to the state, I suppose, is the order of business. So
Right.
the sooner the better. Yeah.
Is going to be the state is going to be involved.
Yeah. So the sooner the signs are in, the sooner we have data, and the sooner you can make the case to, or we can make the case to the state.
All right. Excellent. So there's a few other things here that are kind of all tied together. So the traffic related concerns, traffic volume and speeds. So I think a lot of those, as we look at it, we're going to be able to do more once we have data. We have an old collection device that I've been using a little bit lately. The software doesn't work very well anymore, and it's like a $3,000 upgrade. So I didn't even bother to look into that. Because one of the things that is I've gotten comments on a few roads about speed, and some of that was perception versus reality. At one particular road, I got a lot of comments about speed, and we tracked over 2,000 vehicles. We found 40 of them going over the speed limit. Of those 40, only 8 of them were going more than 7 miles an hour over the speed limit. So I think the data is going to be very important for us to be able to actually take any action and move forward. Volume, and Tim, we've gotten information over the last several years from CMRPC. We know volume's an issue, but this is going to give us just more information on the traffic that's on those roads. It's hard to take any action, or it's going to be hard to take any action without having that data. Speed zoning, I've had requests and talked to people about speed zoning. to be able to have this data before we enter into any discussions with the state on speed zoning. Because in my history and experience with speed zoning, we've never lowered a speed limit when we've gone and done the speed zoning, just because of how they track it and the use of the 85th percentile on the roadway. So to be able to get some data will be good. One thing we can start to look into in speed zoning, and I tried to get some preliminary information from CMRPC, is what streets we have that are designated thickly settled. That is one thing that we can have some control over. There was a change in state statute that allows us to designate any roadway that's designated thickly settled as a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. The problem is we don't have a lot of roadways. And the preliminary information I got from CMRPC, and I'll send out the map, it's small chunks of roads. So what designates a thickly settled road is it's a business, certain business districts, but where the homes are average less than 200 feet apart for over a quarter of a mile. So we had a lot of sections that were just under a quarter of a mile, and then there were huge gaps. We become victim to some of our zoning because of that. Where we have 2 acre zoning and homes are spread out. So it would make it very difficult enforcement wise and marking wise. We'd have to put up a ton of thickly settled signs to mark small areas on roadways. So you'd have the majority of a roadway not posted under the general speed laws where it's not thickly settled. And then you'd have very small areas that would be thickly settled and 25 miles an hour. I think it would be difficult to police, but it's something that we can look into as we move forward, and if we can get some better data.
Keith, how far do you think the 4 mobile radar signs will go in helping mitigate speeds on the town's roadways? And how frequently do you expect you'd have to move them around?
I would expect that we move them around. We would leave them for at least a week on the roads that we're going to put them. And we don't have to put them one in each direction on a roadway. We can kind of break it up. So having 4 is going to allow us some flexibility on where they go. So it's going to do a couple of different things. One, it's going to give us, hopefully it'll slow some people down by giving them a visual cue on what they're doing while they're driving. But on the other hand, it's going to give us that data to, one of the things that you can pull from it is an enforcement report to show the best times of the day or the days of the week for us to be out there and enforce, so that would help to, even if we're not out there stopping cars, but to have a presence on those roads during those times. The hope is that you slow one car down, it slows the 5 that are behind it down. And you're never going to affect every driver that's on the road, but if you can affect a few, it's one of those frustrating things that we have in town right now. We have a high volume of traffic during certain times of the day, but they're not going too fast when there's a high volume of traffic. So, that causes the volume causes a concern. But when we have the volume, we don't have the speeds. But then when you go to a really quiet time and you look out here now, someone's going to go zipping down Route 62 anytime now, just because the volume is really light. But it's going to be using that data to be able to deploy our officers, but then also look at, are there other things that we need to do, to take action? And that kind of comes into one of our other items, which is road and infrastructure work. We've talked about the village center projects in another group. We've talked about complete streets in another group. We have to start to look at what we can do to our roadways, because one of the concerns that has been out lately has been, or people have talked about, and it's not new, but is walking around, and especially walking towards or trying to get to the center of town walking. There are no sidewalks, and that's where, Tim, we worked on complete streets for a while. We have the basic plan, but now what? I think one of the things, and Margaret, we've talked about this, is starting to request from the town some seed funding. There's a lot of grant funding that's out there for these projects, but in order to get some of that funding, we need to have done some of the work in the beginning. We even need to do the design and engineering, or, we have to show I forget how you described it, Margaret, with one of your last meetings, but some sort of a vested commitment to the project. It may not necessarily all be financial, but we have to have that ability. And I think, Mary and Anna, being deeply involved in our budget process, that's not something that you've seen that we have right now. So as we start to prepare for budget season, we're going to need to have a discussion, and maybe Tim, we look at the complete streets plan and we try and pick out a project and say, this is what we need to start to think about funding, or start to think about applying for a grant for, but we're going to need X amount of dollars in funding to start that planning process.
When we met with Carrie last time from CMRPC, we talked about a funding source that might be available to help with some of the preliminary design and engineering. Didn't we have that conversation with her?
We did, and then Margaret had another meeting after, right?
I had a meeting with MassDOT, a couple of officials from MassDOT, but not again with Carrie. So I need to find out from Carrie what exactly that source of funding is.
Right.
To see if that's something we could avail ourselves of. I am a firm, road and infrastructure work is going to be needed down the road. It's not a one and done. The town's going to have a lot of large projects down the road that are going to need the town's commitment and payment toward engineering and design work. So it's essentially going to be a recurring cost. It's almost like our funding of Hot Top, for example. We fund Hot Top every year to supplement our Chapter 90 funds. We're going to have to find a way to programmatically fund these design and engineering costs for infrastructure projects. However, that said, if we're not ready to make that leap, I think that we need to, and I can certainly help this along. We need to find a funding source to start, one or a small group of projects that we could actually move forward with and show residents that with this funding, we can actually accomplish the construction of these projects.
Yeah, I mean, Complete Streets laid out a 20-year cycle of improvements, and they're in reasonable bite-sized pieces that if we can get that money to do the design and review, I think then that allows us some opportunity. Plus, if like you've said before, Margaret, if the federal government is going to push money into infrastructure, there may be opportunities for communities. And, you're looking seriously at the tip. So there may be, with some of those small, what are they, mini tip projects that the state is targeted now, instead of putting all the money into big tip issues. TIP is Transportation Improvement Program, which the federal government pumps money in. Central Mass has a CMMPO that an organization made up of selectmen from some of the subregions that help influence where some of that money goes. And then the Transportation Committee from Central Mass Regional Planning participates in that process. And then the Transportation Division at Central Mass really pushes the TIP, which sort of outlines a 5-year strategic plan as to how those funds are going to be utilized within the 40 communities that we're involved with. And, Margaret's been having some conversation with the folks at Central Mass about, where are the opportunities for us to try to tap into that TIP money. And the state and the feds have now made this mini TIP option available, which, might very well be something that we could utilize. So, we've got a lot of the tools and the pieces. We need to make this first step and begin to demonstrate that there's a process that I think that we could utilize, that on an annual basis, just like so many other things, we are able to attack one part of the infrastructure issue for, traffic and safety and all that stuff.
So as we look at that, and I guess here's one of my concerns is, who would be responsible for a budget like that? I think naturally it kind of falls under the highway department, where it's, but I think we know we have a void there right now with
Right.
what our, kind of our prognosis is. What's the future look like in terms of that? And do they currently have the bandwidth to take anything on? So who would manage a project like this, I guess, is where I'm going. I think this is, Margaret, this is something that we've talked about for a while now, is that we got a lot of great ideas, a lot of things that we need to look at, but people are running out of the ability and the time to manage them and get the grants and get the funding and move things forward. So
For some of the larger projects, there's no question that we would need professional project management, so you would have an engineer on site monitoring and watching and, keeping tabs on the entire project. For small projects, yes, that creates additional demands on staffing. So that is something we need to consider.
All right, so I think something we probably need to talk about before budgets are due, and maybe get a representative from highway to our meetings again. Whether we have Jim or one of the other guys at least here, and take a look at what we have. And I don't know, Tim, do you think we should take a look at the complete streets and say this is the first project we want to try and move forward with?
Yeah, I think definitely. And maybe float a couple ideas out and see what kind of reaction we get from other town officials and citizens as well, because buy-in from folks is going to make a big difference in terms of our ability to pull some funding out of the town on occasion if we need it.
Right, and it's something we've talked about this with some of other things with Village Center, is that whatever we choose to do in the beginning, we need to be successful.
Yeah, so I just had a thought, if we had Complete Streets project initiated and they're doing construction work on Route 62, it would actually probably reduce the volume and speed of the traffic.
So maybe we can find a little project every year so people want to avoid the area.
Right.
Make it one continual project.
So I think the first mini tips projects needs to be at 5 corners, and it needs to be, like in the way all the time. Now, seriously, I want to loop back, Tim, to I wouldn't have known what the word tip meant, transportation improvement project, but now you've enlightened me. And the transportation improvement project that I really think the town of Berlin needs is to straighten out the 495-290 interchange. And I don't know what Central Mass's regional planning's view is on that, but I sure hope it's near the top of their list, because we're getting traffic because of that highway problem, and our EMTs are getting activity because of that highway problem.
Yeah.
So it's very expensive to the town of Berlin that the state hasn't fixed that.
Well, I think Tom can speak to that, because I think he's probably up to date. I mean, they're going to add an extra lane and they're going to begin that process pretty quickly. So
is that in both directions?
No, so they're only going to address 495 north to 290 west. Any large redesign of the whole interchange will not occur until 495 at the Mass Pike are done.
Well, that isn't going to help Berlin at all, is it?
oh yes, yeah.
That will. So
north to go west on 290. How is that going to help?
I'm sorry, 495 south to go west.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, yes, that will help.
So 2 lanes on that exit instead of the 1. So it significantly increases their ability to get traffic off of 495.
Are they going to do any signage or lane sort of guidance further north? Between,
like in Boxborough?
No, like between 117, I commuted this daily. I'm quite familiar with how that traffic, and many times I needed to go to Worcester. So I had all kinds of tricks about how am I going to do that, right? In commuter hours, southbound in the evening. So, but one thing that's very clear to me from all that commuting is that people need to get into the right lanes after 117. They have to start moving after 117, because the problem is you have no visibility as you head down the hill, and that happens right at Route 62. And so a lot of what goes on between Route 62 and 290 as you head south has to do with people being in the wrong lane. And when you consider that it's an interstate travel corridor, people don't even know, and there's no signs. When you get past one, so there's actually low-hanging fruit for the state to improve that. And then if you put up those flexible dividers, with the lanes, they'd be even better. Because then, you guys going 290.
Start some of that. Unfortunately, not enough. One of the things that they're limited by are some of the overpass, the bridges, as you approach 290, that they can't. So they,
Right.
as far back as they can, they've extended the queue lane for 290. But the biggest problem, and from what Tim said when they're going to do 2 lanes, the other thing they're going to do is they're going to smooth that curve out and eliminate that S that's there. The actual design is to allow tractor trailers to maintain a speed of 40 miles an hour. And that should eliminate a lot of it. And the hope is by eliminating that slowdown, that problem of people either being in the wrong lane or intentionally being in the wrong lane, which I think it becomes a lot of it. You get 1 or 2 that speed up and then jam on their brakes to try and fit in a little hole. And that really causes a trickle down backup that will fix itself. The other aspect of the whole interchange is, 290 eastbound coming to 495. And there was a fatal crash there last week because the backups are, extending past Solomon Pond Road, which is forcing people to get off and then cut through town to get to 495, where it's always kind of been the other way, people cutting through to get to 290.
Yeah, and that's where the Pleasant Street issues are coming up, and issues on my street are coming up because people will get off at 117 to avoid it and come down Berlin Road, Highland Street, Carter Street, and so it's and just in general, the people I worked with in Bill Ricca, I'm commuting to Shrewsbury. Well, yes, I get off at 62 because it's easier, and then they're going down Pleasant Street, or they're going,
So, Margaret,
you're muted, Margaret.
Oh, that's not a bad thing. Lucy is an attendee and she has her hand up, Chief.
You want to just promote her into so she can talk? I mean, she's the only one in the audience, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Why don't you bring her into?
Okay. Okay.
So we're agreed we're going to have lots of construction on Route 62, right? That's going to happen. We're going to have mini tips.
That would be.
We're going to go for the big tip down at the.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi, I was hoping I would get a few questions answered, and one of them, and I understand that this is not an area that is considered to be, very heavily populated, and certainly not for a quarter of a mile, but it's very dangerous. And I mean, I know that most of you know that I have spent almost $10,000 just putting in a new driveway so that I don't get run over by these trucks that are coming up over the hill. And believe me, they are the most frightening things that I've ever had. Every time someone comes to visit me, I said, just be careful. If you don't have 3 seconds to get out, don't even try. And, and I would like to know what can be done to alleviate some of this. I mean, it's frightening. I mean, it's added gray hairs to me that me and my hairdresser cover over, but it's very frightening to me. And I know that it's not this major concern, but when they come down that swale and then they come up over the hill and they're zooming. And I know, like, even like you said, that it's like they're only going 7 miles over the speed limit, most of them, and that's 42 miles an hour. But if I'm trying to get out of my driveway, I'm coming out at 15, 20 miles an hour. If somebody's coming over at 42 miles an hour, well, I mean, I'm prime target there, and it's frightening. And I would like to know what can be done about this. And with Pollard Road coming in, it's going to be even worse. And it's the trucks that come over that hill, and they jake their brakes right in front of my house. Not all of them, but enough of them do that it's very noisy. I keep the front windows closed to try to minimize the noise. But what can be done about this?
So I think you can tell by some of our discussion, there's no easy answer.
I understand that, but there's got to be some kind of an answer, because even though I'm just one person who's complaining about it, I do have some neighbors who feel the same way. I'm just the vocal person, and even people further down on Route 62 have complained about it.
Hey, yeah, Lucy, you're not alone. In the center of town, the people that live right
Yes.
there and have, the Jake breaks. They're all,
Yeah.
They're all there.
Yeah, so-
everybody is aware.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Jakes is something that we have a potential answer to, and it's a deeper discussion that we're gonna have to have as a committee before the next town meeting. So one of the things that's a possibility, and yeah, as you say, Mary, one of the residents in the center of town grabbed me actually at town meeting, and we started this discussion, is that we can amend the part of our bylaws to include a Jake break restriction through the entire town. So I actually have a sample already, but that was one of the things that I was going to talk about at the end tonight.
Oh,
Is
okay.
that we want to push that forward for our next town meeting to try and amend our bylaws. So that what that would allow us to do is put signage kind of at every entrance to town. And we could set a fine amount somewhere from $100 to $300 that unless the truck's using it in an emergency circumstance, that there's no Jake brake usage. So that's one way to start to address that. In terms of overall issues on the road, that's one of the things of why we want to start to talk about some of these projects, because one of the terms you'll hear in traffic calming is kind of putting the road on a diet, and to do things actually to the roadway that force traffic to slow down naturally. And because even for us as the police department, West Street's one of our most heavily traveled roads. We're out there all the time, but we can never be there all the time. So to try and actually make some physical changes to the roadways that naturally force vehicles to slow down. And that's why we're having these discussions about some larger scale projects and some things that can actually affect the overall roadway that would then make it a safer corridor to travel. Because one thing that we do realize, and I think everyone has to realize, is that we could have a building moratorium here in the town of Berlin, and never build another structure, never add another person, and our traffic is going to continue to get worse because our neighbors and then our neighbors' neighbors and their neighbors are continuing to build, and the population's continuing to grow in our region.
And I was wondering, is there any possibility to put some signs in there, reduced speed ahead? Just to make people aware that, that they're not just suddenly thinking, oh, it's 35 miles per hour at this point here, and then starting to slow down there so that when they get to the 20-mile-per-hour zone, they're maybe getting down to 35 miles per hour.
That's something we can discuss. That's something I think when we look at signs, we need to find a balance. But that's something, and I don't know, Tim, was that something that CMRPC may have an engineer, someone that looks at roadways and think what signage might need to be put up?
We can certainly inquire.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I worked for another agency that we put up too many signs, and then they become ignored. There was actually a German study on that about signage, and that you want to make sure you find a balance. So I think that there's definitely some merit to that, Lucy, to look at some of the proper signs. Some of the more rural areas I know, like up north, as you're traveling into the areas, there's a warning sign to let you know that there's a reduction in the speed limit coming. So that might be a good idea. But I think
I think the signage that we've talked about acquiring, when you begin to put those on 62, I believe you're going to see some impact, and
I hope so. That's the plan. So moving those around and putting those at different areas about town should hopefully be helpful.
The big sign that's up next to me in Highland Street is working.
And what's nice
Anna,
about that,
are you seeing it, Anna? Are you seeing a change?
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
and with that sign, that one you can't miss that one. So that we can put that in some of the areas, especially Route 62 would be a good area for that, because there's some space in some areas to be able to park it. That's the one thing we do definitely need for that sign, is a lot of space. But the new ones with some color and some response, hopefully will help as well.
For anybody here familiar with the truck situation, and maybe what Central Mass Regional Planning has told us, are we seeing more truck traffic on 62 because of changes in Hudson? or Bolton? Is there a consensus on this?
I think it's hard to tell. I don't know, Tim, if we've gotten counts yet this year.
Well, yeah.
Because there's a couple of major projects in the area going on with the capping of the dump in Clinton and Maplewood. That when those projects end, I think then we'll get a better idea of what our actual day-to-day traffic is.
I'm talking about the 18-wheelers, the big ones.
Right. No, but that's what is hauling to those locations.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We're due for a traffic count next year. We do it every 3 years. So
Good.
the last count was 2019, and I was looking at those numbers just a minute ago. I think we ought to be strategic about where we ask for those counts to take place. We get 10, and we really didn't do much on 62 the last time.
They had some out a couple of months ago, out on 62 near the animal hospital, like for 2 or 3 days.
I can check. The state asked, because of COVID, they began to feel that the data that was going to be collected through most of last year was not going to be too informative, because traffic was way off and unusual. So what they did begin to notice was that local traffic responded and came back much faster than the traffic on the Mass Pike and some of the other bigger interchanges. So I can check and see if they were asked to do anything on 62 and whether indeed that number is available.
That's going to be really important. The strategic placement of those traffic counts is going to be very important for a future TIP project, because that's some of the data that we're going to need to provide.
Yeah, because last time we did Bridge Road, Carter Street, I think we get 10, and I think we ought to, as a committee, look at that pretty seriously and decide where exactly we want those to take place. So that'll be during the 2022 year that we get those.
Okay, good. So Lucy, all that will help us in actually coming up with a plan so that we can make some improvements.
Okay, if you want any input from me, I'd be happy to offer it. And if anyone wants to sit in my driveway anytime and just, monitor the traffic that goes through and the speeds of the traffic, I'd be happy to let them do that.
Okay. That's great. Chief, I wonder if you could address Lucy's question on the truck routes and Bolton.
So Bolton put a truck restriction on Wattaquatic, and that was it, just on Wattaquatic Hill Road. So not on through the whole town, not forcing all trucks to go into Berlin or anything like that. And it's hard to say with these projects going on if that's created any additional truck traffic for us at this point. Like I said, it'll be interesting once we get the counts from.
Well, the West Street and Lancaster Road are both existing truck routes, so it's hard to know where the impacts would be felt. We do know that Clinton took exception with one of Bolton's proposals, but it changed absolutely nothing existing in Berlin. So that's a tough one to know as far as impacts with trucking on West and Lancaster roads.
I'm glad you brought up truck routes, because that was something else I wanted to talk about. So we have 2 roads now that are posted no trucks, both Woodward Ave. Now why am I drawing a blank? And Gates Pond Road. But I have not been able to find any paperwork from the selectmen, any paperwork through the state that we've actually filed for a truck exclusion on those roads. I did have, when I was asking about the thickly settled areas with CMRPC, they did say they would be able to assist with truck exclusions. Is that something, I wanted to bring it to the committee to see if that's something you think we should pursue before I brought it to the selectmen to ask if the selectmen would like to pursue that. I think most people in town perceive that we already have it on those roads. But we don't actually have anything enforceable. And what's nice about actually having them in the books and having them, the state having them, those get plugged into the GPSs that truckers use. so that when they put a route in, it doesn't take them on those roads. That's one thing that we find with Gates Pond Road is that, I think we should, if we did it, it would be Gates Pond and Marlborough Road combined. That truckers would get off of 495 and then they'll use Gates Pond Road to cut through to whether they're getting to 290 or they're getting to some other destination in that direction.
So Chief, we have them posted, but they're not actually enforceable because the state hasn't
Correct.
signed off on them.
Correct.
Well, yeah, we need to do something about that.
And I guess my question is, do we need one on Woodward Ave? I'm guessing the Woodward Ave one was as a result of the lumberyard. And so trucks weren't queuing in that area.
Well, going back.
From my perspective.
There was complaints about trucks idling through there.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why those signs went up.
Because one of the things that I see is if they're queuing there, they're not queuing on Route 62. But if they queue on Route 62, to go back to our early discussion, they'll slow people down by causing an impediment in traffic. So if that's something you think we should pursue, I'll bring that up to the select board and also to CMRPC again and see if they have the ability to help us run through. Because just from watching Bolton go through the process, they had brought a consultant in to do it. I think it was probably part of their intersection redesign there at 117. And there's notification to neighboring communities. We have to ensure that there's other means to get there with, and that we're not like just forcing it off and causing a problem on a neighbor. So what does everyone think about that?
I'd take every measure we can to get it official and get it into the GPS systems.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, I will have a discussion next 2 weeks when I'm in front of the selectmen. And then I'll have that discussion with CMRPC and see if they are actually able to assist, or if it's something that we're going to need to, have a consultant help us with, or if it's something that we can muddle through ourselves. I'm sure we could probably find a way to get through it ourselves, but I think kind of the response I got from CMRPC is, oh, that's something we can help you with, is what I was told.
It seems as though once you begin that, you'll initiate a cascade of requests to prohibit trucks on multiple roads. So how do we be more proactive about that? So it seems like we need to establish some sort of criteria that allows us to evaluate those requests that might come in. Maybe Central.
That's a good point.
Yes, they might have. I wonder if they have something in place that they've used with other communities. Say you need to look at A, B, C, and D before you start to put something like this in place.
Mm-hmm. Chief, just a simple question again on those mobile radar signs. What is the delivery estimate on those? Once you order those, will they come in fairly quickly?
I would hope so, but that I'll have to find out.
Okay.
I've learned with a lot of other purchases recently, the delivery times have been extended.
Okay.
I don't know if they require any chips from China, like all
Right,
the
I was
cars
going
do.
to say.
So
Yeah.
that could be a problem.
Yeah, the sooner we get them.
Yep, I'll just re-quote it all, this week, because there's been a little bit of time with that, and then I'll place the order either by Friday or by early next week.
Good. And I think those signs that you showed, the ones from Elon City, are in the spirit of what was discussed at the Shared Streets and Spaces Forum. So I think those would be in line with what people are thinking, I believe.
That was part of my thinking. They wanted some of that feedback. Other than just telling you you're going too fast, they wanted some of that, as the sign still says too fast, that it would be some of that positive feedback that you can, thank people for going, say thank you if they're going within the speed limit or within the acceptable range.
Great. And Lucy, to your questions on regular road signage, I'm happy to, I don't know if I sent you the link to where you'd find the street sign request form, but I'm happy to send that off to you.
Okay, you might have sent it to me, but I didn't notice it. So if you could do it
Okay,
again.
I will resend.
So Margaret, is that for town of Berlin streets or is that for Route 62?
That's Town of Berlin streets, any
Yeah.
streets in the town.
Yeah, so it isn't gonna help Lucy with, because she's right on 62, her driveways. And
No,
and
but
so,
if she made the request to the town could then make the request to the state.
oh, sorry. My
Yeah.
mistake.
So Lucy, the select board established a procedure and a street sign request procedure and form. So I'm going to send you the link to the form. So
Okay.
you can fill that out and get it in, okay?
Great.
All right.
Speaking of street sign requests to the town, I have a couple in the queue for stop signs.
Right.
That's
So-
not on your agenda,
It
Chief.
wasn't, I forgot, yeah, I did not put that on the agenda for this one, because was that at the last meeting that we decided we were gonna hold off on that? I forget, we had a discussion about that a little bit.
I don't know. I don't remember a discussion on it in this group. Might have been with a different group.
It might
Oh,
have
we
been.
talked about it.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have those in hand right now. We should add those, I think, probably to the next agenda.
so
maybe
as
set the
we,
next
as we
meeting.
move forward now, and now we kind of had our summer hiatus, I think we should probably start to meet a little bit more regularly. And, at least meet next month, and hopefully we'll have those signs in, and I'll have some more information on truck exclusions, and I will, the other thing that was on the agenda was the draft parking regs. I forgot, I didn't get those done and sent out. I did just get them sent to you tonight. So we'll take a look at those. I may send a draft to the selectmen to look at anyways, but then we'll have another meeting in a few weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and we'll discuss those as well. So I think that the parking regs are pretty simple and straightforward. So I think unless anyone has anything else.
I have, Chief, I just wanted to note additional comments. I think I forwarded these to the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee. We got a few requests from residents of 62 Central Street regarding signage there, and I sent a link to the street sign request form.
And they also
To
had
those
gate
two-
rate concerns, right? I believe.
Go slow, children, what else was there? A warning that vehicles should be slowing down as they approach the center, more Jake brakes. And then there was a question as to whether or not MassDOT needs to approve the signs on the state roadway.
I think some of the discussion we had when we were doing those crosswalk signs in the center was a lot of the minor things we're able to do on our own. It's when it becomes more of a major project that we're really going to have to get approval. But I'm going to reach out to one of my contacts anyways to see if I can get an update on the 290, 495 project. And I'll just ask that question as well.
Okay. All right. So I did send the link to these individuals. I'll double check tomorrow and send the link to Lucy as well for the street sign request. And then we received another concern, this one from Pleasant Street, regarding traffic speeds and volume and how they have changed dramatically in the past year. This resident had some comments about where she thought the traffic, especially truck traffic, derived from, and I shared that with the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee as well.
Yeah, I think actually that resident I had a long discussion with last week.
Okay.
And I told them about the signs and these signs that were going to be coming in and that they're going to be helpful as we
Good.
start.
Okay.
We actually talked also about some of the other things and grant funding and that type of thing. So kind of just a lot of what we talked about, I talked about with them as well.
Wonderful. Okay, I just wanted to bring those to the committee's attention.
Excellent. All right.
An unrelated topic after we closed, but Anna asked a question through Margaret about Highland Ridge. And I can't remember what it was now, but I wanted to say if we could hold a minute after we close the meeting, we could talk about that. Is that all right?
Is it traffic related?
Well, it could be. I
Okay.
could make up a bunch of questions. I'm not quite sure that I know what it was, but maybe in a moment I can scroll my email.
Did it have something to do with the subdivision that we just approved for Amos Wheeler Road with Duncan Baum's land?
Oh, yes. Yeah, there was a rumor in the neighborhood that the Baum land has been sold to Rhodes, and that Venacasa is looking at purchasing from Rhodes the Baum land.
All right, so before we get into that,
Yeah.
Mary, did you have something else? No.
Well, I looked at Margaret's note about the phone call on Pleasant Street, your conversation, and you asked about placement of mailboxes, Margaret. I just happen to know the post office said they only can be on one side of the road because my neighbor put up the mailbox for me. So I have to walk across the street to get my mail. But that's
Okay.
because it's a postal office thing. They only deliver on one side.
Gotcha.
That's good to know. Thank you, Mary.
So we have to go out and play in traffic to get our mail. That's
Yes.
one of the
And-
things that happens.
Living on a blind corner, running across the street.
Yeah. It's all there. And I'm sorry to go back to it, but my request on stop signs, I must not have been at the meeting when it came up, and I don't know what the resolution was.
No, you were there because we talked about the need to throw a sign on Carter to stop people as well as on Highland. And I mean, Carter going east and Carter going north and Highland coming south.
Okay, yeah, we did, but resolution, is there a resolution?
Oh,
Is
no,
there
no,
a-
no resolution.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, God,
I
no.
thought there was some, yeah.
No,
and-
but
and-
we talked about it though.
Okay, we did talk about it. Yes, you're right, Tim. I was there. And so now I'm raising it again saying, when? When can we do this? And oh, by the way, can we do it at Randall as well? You know, I had this vision, Tim, if there was a stop sign at Pleasant Street and Sawyer Hill Road in both directions, that would be really disappointing for the cut-through traffic. But then somebody could make a left turn out of Sawyer Hill, you know, somebody could come out of that road. And again, it would pulse, it would calm the traffic.
Yeah, it's, you know, when Solomon Pond Mall was built, the individuals that lived in Marlboro on Bigelow requested stop signs at every intersection with every subdivision road all the way into Elm. And they lived with that for a number of years, but I mean, what you notice now is that there's been a reduction in the number of stop
There's
signs
only
because
two
I
now.
think the people that lived there began to say, this is onerous on us, and, you know, so I agree that experimenting with Randall and Highland and Carter makes a lot of sense, because I think those are far enough apart. And I think the traffic calming potential is probably pretty significant. I don't think it'll reduce the number of cars, which I think it may have done on Bigelow for a while anyway, but I think it's going to calm them. It has to, you know, unless they get anxious and decide they're going to go faster and be little jackrabbits in between those stop signs. But we can test that out and see what happens.
Yeah, well, the two streets in town that are getting the 495, 290 traffic, my view, and GPS traffic are Berlin Road, Highland Street, and Pleasant Street. Because you have that straight shot of several miles with no obstacle. And so they're just, you know.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you know, all they have to do on Saturday or Sunday, depending on the time of day and which day it is, it's either going north or it's going south, but it's Connecticut, New Jersey, boats, campers, you know, it's pretty steady. And they don't stop here, so it doesn't do me any good. So
Exactly. Well, wouldn't that be nice, right?
it would be,
good
you
for
know.
business.
Actually, there have been a couple that stop now routinely every year. And I say, I remember you. And they say, yeah, we're from Connecticut and we buy corn here on our way back from Maine at the end of the summer. And I say, well, thank you very much. But that's about the only one I've recognized. So.
So, yeah. Yeah, there are so few things. The real traffic issues are the things that, like Lucy's raising, that are around Route 62. I mean, the really serious ones, but the ones that are in the control of the town more so are roads and looking at the ones that are cut through. And I understand the traffic from Clinton uses, what's the road? Is it Dudley Road? What's the road that goes over and down to Linden that people use to get to the mall? There's
Art.
Well,
sorry,
they use Derby to Linden to
Derby,
Crosby
Derby.
to
Yeah.
South. I mean, they do
Yes.
that, so.
Yeah, and so there's a few like that, and then also South Street
Mm.
could use a stop sign, you know, maybe at the road that goes into the transfer station, you know, what is that depot? What is that called?
Jones Road.
Yeah.
What are you, new to town or something? What's going on?
I don't look at the signs. I forget the names of
Going
these.
too fast.
Exactly.
Oh.
All right, so here's an idea that I have, where we're gonna get these new signs, and I think if we're gonna suggest or present to the select board that we would like to do this and put signs up, I think to have some counts and have some volume numbers to be able to present along with this. So what I like to do is that when we get these signs, one of the first roads we put a pair of them on, or one of them on, is Highland Street. We'll get some numbers, and then we'll have some data to go with that request to the select board.
Yeah, thank you. I don't mean to push hard on this, and I know you need the data to justify doing this. So yeah, we're moving along.
Okay.
This is good. And
Well,
I
I
wish
don't
we
know
could do
how
it.
it happened that two of you from the same damn street ended up on this committee, but
And we're the people with the money, so you know.
Very
I know.
true.
It's stacked, it's stacked,
How did that happen?
right?
All right, excellent. Well, then I guess a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So move.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Everybody, aye. Go around.